La Liga's biggest rivalry delivered, as Real Madrid walked away with the 2-1 win after Gundogan had put Barcelona in the driving seat. Bellingham took the game by the scruff of the neck to give Los Blancos the victory. Both sides had their moments, so what did we see on display tactically from both managers? Starting with Barcelona, as they were more dangerous initially until Real adapted. Even from the goal kick, Barcelona were looking to create numerical advantages. Usually when a team is building up with a back three, we see two of the centre-backs split, with the third one becoming a full-back, allowing the wing-back to push up higher. However, scenarios like this still provide the opportunity for a man-to-man press by the forwards, which can still make progression slightly more difficult for Barcelona. So instead, once the ball was live, we'd see Christensen push to a defensive midfield position, and because a forward had been tracking him, they were often drawn much more centrally with him, meaning if the remaining forward, either Rodrigo or Vinicius, was drawn in towards Ter Stegen, there would be the opportunity to play wide on either side, making Barcelona more unpredictable initially. And once a wider centre-back did get on the ball, there was now the opportunity to create overloads on the flanks, especially if a forward like Felix was moving wider to try and create a 2 versus 1 against the fullback, which we did see Barcelona enact on more than one occasion. And in open play situations, what could have been a 4 on paper was actually a back 3, as we have just seen, with Araujo taking up the right centre-back position, and this formation allowed the attacking instincts of both Balde and Cancelo to flourish in the wing-back positions. Whilst Ferran was the centre forward on paper, with Felix and Fermin either side of him. And for the most part, Barcelona did use a box midfield, as we've seen many teams enact. However, unlike we might see with this system at a Manchester City for example, there was a lot of fluidity with this front three in the box, rather than rigidly sticking to their positions. Especially due to Ferran not being a traditional 9, but instead being much more willing to drop in. So what this would mean is now Barcelona had advantages, both in the deeper area with this 3 versus 2. But where the midfield could have looked like more of a man-to-man situation, which we did see Real try to do with Valverde and Bellingham on the pivots initially, the reality was Ferran would often drop in, essentially as a midfielder, to create a 5 versus 4. And crucially, because of the fluidity and positional freedom we discussed, it wouldn't be as easy as simply getting a centre-back to follow high up the pitch with Ferran when he dropped. This is because Barcelona were sure to always have runners in behind, so if Felix dropped, it would be difficult for Rudiger, for example, to follow, as Ferran would be making the move. And we could see many different combinations of this, as long as there was always a runner moving in behind. So, we often saw that Barcelona were able to get into the midfield fairly easily on more than one occasion. Early in that first half, Real Madrid were struggling, and Barcelona could take advantage of this narrow shape from Real Madrid, as they could look to find a wider centre-back, and as the rest of the side shifted across, this would naturally draw almost all of Real Madrid's men across the pitch. This would then of course allow Barcelona to look for the direct switch or play through the backline to find a man on the other side of the pitch, and Cancelo in particular, as we saw, was not afraid to take on Mendy or Camavinga in 1 versus 1 situations. So we saw this often, with Barcelona consistently switching sides to take advantage of Real's narrow shape. And before Real had adapted, we often saw them looking to create a 3 versus 3 high up when they were pressuring, as if the ball went to Araujo, it would often be Bellingham from the midfield who would spring forward. If it was instead Inigo Martinez on the ball, then it would be Valverde's responsibility to push up. But as discussed, they already had the 4 versus 5 disadvantage in the midfield, so if a man pushed higher up the pitch in these situations, this only aggravated the overload that Barcelona could create in these central regions. So Real Madrid adapted, and we saw this stem Barcelona's attacking flow, where in the very early stages they were a dedicated 4 in defense as well. Soon Valverde began to drop into more of a right wing-back position, as Real Madrid shifted to a back 5 fluidly. What this now meant in particular is that when a man like Felix was looking to drop deep, where before if Valverde had been high, Rudiger would have been hesitant to drop in with him due to the potential gap that it created, whilst Carvajal would also be hesitant due to the pace of Balde potentially in behind. But now with Valverde on Balde, Carvajal could look to follow Felix around the midfield, evening things up and freeing up the likes of Tchouaméni and Kroos to pick up the men who were left between the lines. And this did help Real Madrid with dealing with the box/midfield five. But football is often about picking your poison, so there were disadvantages to this shape for Real Madrid, primarily this 3 versus 2 advantage in the first phase. Now what we would see, with the front two still being fairly narrow, was the likes of Inigo Martinez being granted this space out wide, so he could push up easily into the attacking third, bypassing Real Madrid's midfield fairly easily, and now looking to have combinations higher up the pitch after getting into good zones. With Barca now being more aggressive with their wider centre-backs though, we now saw Real Madrid having more success on the transition, particularly with Vinicius looking to hit aggressively behind Araujo when he got caught higher up the pitch. And often he got into dangerous positions on the break, but was just missing the final touch to get into a great goal-scoring position. But despite Barcelona having the better of the first half, they actually did not create that many clear-cut scoring opportunities. But what about Real in possession? What were they up to and how did they turn the game around? In control possession, Barcelona were a bit more aggressive in their press, and rather than having their back five, it was actually a 4, with Ferran and Fermin often forming the front two, whilst Felix dropped deeper on the left, with Cancelo operating more as a right midfielder in the higher block. This would now allow them to be man-to-man against the centre-backs, whilst Felix and Cancelo could press if the ball went wide. This could be dangerous though, as Real Madrid would still have the 4 versus 2, and we did see them break the press on occasion. But particularly early on, they only had a single pivot in the build-up, so the riskier option Barcelona took at times was pushing a man higher up onto this deeper pivot. Alternatively, they could switch to a piston press, with one man pressing a centre-back, and then if it went wide to the other, the second forward would spring forward to still apply the pressure, hopefully forcing them wide, and then allowing the winger to press. So more and more as the match went on, to counteract this, we saw Kroos drop into more of a left centre-back position, allowing Mendy to push higher up, often into the half space, as Vinicius preferred to stay out wide. This now meant that they had a 3 versus 2 against that front two, and a much easier outlet in Toni Kroos to do most of the progression in these deeper zones. The likes of Cancelo still would look to back up this press, and Vinicius could drop deep, but Araujo was also aggressive in following him. So if Real could not find the man running into the space vacated, Barcelona were beginning to look more effective in preventing the progression into their own third. This is where we began to see some of the disadvantages of Rodrigo and Vinicius as the front two, as both were looking to come towards the ball to begin the play. However, as the second man often wasn't making the run in behind, the centre-back could be comfortable pressing the dropping forward, and they did not have the strength to hold off their man, meaning there were often turnovers. In the second half, as Real got more aggressive, we did see the likes of Bellingham and other midfield runners looking to make these movements when the forward did drop, and the potential to be effective from these situations. But when Real did get higher up the pitch, Barcelona would drop into more of their back five, with Cancelo dropping back in to right wing back, and Gundogan, Gavi, and often Felix tucking in, with Fermin able to drop in if required. One thing that Real Madrid did do well, even in the first half when they weren't at their best, was always have midfield runners into the box. So it wasn't just Rodrigo and Vinicius waiting for the cross, but the likes of Valverde, and importantly Bellingham, as we saw for the winning goal, would also be flooding in, looking to take advantage of sheer numerical superiority. But two changes that must be highlighted were the arrivals of Camavinga and later Joselu. With Real Madrid basing a lot of their play down the left-hand side, Camavinga gave them more control on the ball than Mendy. This could be either by he himself getting on the ball as the third centre back, allowing Kroos to remain higher up and either create numerical superiority or just use his technical ability to evade the press. Or if Kroos still did look to drop deep, Camavinga didn't always have to necessarily come wide, as he could also invert into these more central regions, again the goal being to give Real Madrid more control in the midfield. Joselu, on the other hand, is much more of a physical forward, so Real could also look to fire the ball into him when he was dropping deeper, and he had a better chance than Rodrigo of holding off the centre-back, allowing Real to then move up the pitch. Even higher up the pitch, having Camavinga in this position allowed Real Madrid to keep hold of the ball and rotate it much more efficiently, pinning Barcelona deeper and deeper and increasing their odds of getting the goal. And in the second half we did see Real have more possession. But in the end, this match was the perfect example of the game being decided by a combination of making the most of your lucky moments as well as individual brilliance of players on display, rather than tactical brilliance. The result puts Real 4 points ahead of Barca, although so much of the season is still left to play. But I want to know your early prediction for the La Liga winners. For the manager tactical score, I thought Xavi was a step ahead tactically, earning a 6.5 with Ancelotti earning a 5. But what are your ratings? Drop them down below. And I have the 2 perfect videos for you to watch on screen now. One looking at how Mourinho ended Pep's dominance at Barcelona, or one looking at how Messi produced his most iconic moment. The choice is yours. A quick shout out to my Patreons for helping to make this video possible. If you want to support, head on over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple and you'll get rewards like early access to videos and exclusive content.